When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Prime Big Deal Days is here.
Woohoo!
Which can lead to involuntary deal squeals, like the classic deal on a new blender squeal.
Yeah!
Save big this Prime Big Deal Days, on now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Two-Footed Podcast here on EPL Index. Now, before we kick things off today, I just want to share something with everybody. This episode is brought to you by our partners at Sky Bet. We've teamed up with Sky Bet because they truly understand what it means to be a fan. Sky Bet appreciates the length that people go to support their team in all areas, whether you're a match-going fan or otherwise. And there's just no better fit for us right now than a partnership with the good folks at Sky Bet. So with that said, let's go. What's good, boys and girls? Two-Footed Podcast. Today is Wednesday. It is the 9th, I believe, the 9th of October. Hope you're all well. Weather update, meh. It's getting quite grey and looks like it's going to rain, which isn't great for my lawn mowing prospects, which isn't ideal. Right, today we are brought to you, as we were yesterday, by our good friends at Sky Bet. And I thought we'd take a quick look at the state of play in the Championship, League One and League Two, and see how things are settling in. So, in the Championship, bearing in mind we have no games this weekend, the entire Championship slate obviously is on hold until the international break comes back. But at the weekend, we had Sunderland 2, Leeds United 2. Ilian Meslier is a very highly rated young goalkeeper, and yet when I watch him play, I wonder where the development is, where the improvement is, because he makes spectacular saves. He looks like a big presence in goal. He's decent with his feet. He's athletic. And yet he still makes rudimentary errors, fundamental flaws in his game, such as his footwork, that haven't improved. And we're talking now with Meslier, is it 4 seasons as Leeds United's first choice goalkeeper? Let's see, he's 24 years of age now. This is season number 5. Now, technically it's season number 6 because he did play in the Championship with them in the 1920 season, but he had 4 full seasons prior to this one as the undisputed first choice goalkeeper. 3 of them in the Premier League. And he didn't arrive to them as a rookie who'd never played. He played basically a full season of games for Lorient in the French second division. This is a player with over 200 senior appearances under his belt. It's a lot of football. And there's been improvement. It's not to say there hasn't been improvement, but there's been no improvement to the level where we would talk about him as one of the best young goalkeepers in the world. And that's where he was expected to be, because you look at him, 6'6", good reflexes, good athleticism, commanding presence. He seems like a decent talker. He's okay with his feet. He can pull off the spectacular saves. You know, he can dominate aerially. You would think that at 24 years of age, he would be high on the list of any Premier League club looking for a new goalkeeper. When was the last time you saw Ilian Meslier's name linked with a Premier League club? Like when Southampton and Wolves and Bournemouth were looking for goalkeepers in the summer, they weren't even looking for him. Chelsea, who've bought 43 goalkeepers in the last couple of years,
I don't believe they've been linked with him in about 18 months. Liverpool went out in the summer and bought a goalkeeper of a similar age to be their long-term number one after Alisson Becker. They didn't even consider him. Manchester United last summer went out and spent huge money on a goalkeeper. He wasn't mentioned. Newcastle are looking for a new goalkeeper for the long term. They're not looking at him. Arsenal went out last summer and got a new goalkeeper. They weren't even considering Ilian Meslier. And it speaks to a failure of Leeds United to develop him properly. And part of that is that there's been overexposure, that he has played too much, and that when he's made mistakes, he hasn't necessarily been taken out of the firing line. He's been put back into making more. And I don't know if his confidence just isn't where it should be, but certainly his level of performance is not where it should be. In this game, the goal he concedes in stoppage time is just, I still have no idea how it goes in. Like, I get that it takes a deflection off Firpo. I get there's a bit of spin on it. But the deflection is a good distance for him. The ball is not travelling fast. I don't know how he's not able to readjust his feet. I really don't know how he's not able to readjust his feet. In this game, Sunderland go 1-up through Chris Rigg, who, by the way, what a talent that kid looks. Joel Perreault equalises. Junior Firpo puts Leeds ahead, and then deep in stoppage time, this goal takes place. It's credited as a Firpo own goal, but I mean, this is one of the issues I have, is that in 6 months, people will look back on that and look, maybe if Leeds don't go up, they'll look at results. Well, why didn't Leeds go up? Oh, they conceded a late goal against Sunderland. That cost them what might be 2 big points. Oh, Junior Firpo scored an own goal. There will be no record of Ilian Meslier having made such a mistake unless you choose to go back and watch that goal, which most people won't do. They will simply forget about it. When they look at what happened, they'll go, oh, Junior Firpo scored an own goal. It must be his fault that Leeds didn't win the game. And Meslier will skate away scot-free. That kind of stuff bothers me. Hull City have not made the start to the season that their ownership had hoped, but they have made the start that I would have expected, considering they changed manager and lost so many good players. Thumped 4-0 here by Norwich City. Marcelino Nunes, Josh Sargent, Kate Gordon, and Boria Sainz with the goals. Burnley 0, Preston 0. Portsmouth 1, Oxford United 1. Marco Mahoney scoring for Portsmouth, good to see. Louis Sibley scoring for Oxford. Very talented player, was at Derby. Hasn't quite developed the way it was hoped, but still looks like he's got a bit of a chance anyway. Swansea 0, Stoke 0. Watford 2, Middlesbrough 1. Middlesbrough ahead through George Edmondson early in the second half. Kayembe and Ba with the goals. Ba in the 87th minute to win it late for Watford. Sheffield United 2, Luton 0. Luton's bad start continues. Jesserun Raksaki, who's in on loan from Crystal Palace, with both goals for the Blades. Derby County 2, QPR 0. Curtis Nelson and Marcus Harness, 2 goals, I think, in like 70 seconds there for Derby, give them a good win. Plymouth 2, Blackburn 1. This is a good win for Wayne Rooney in Plymouth. Michael Obafemi opens the scoring. Joe Wankin Costello equalises very late for Blackburn. Looked like they were going to get a draw out of this, having been outplayed for the majority. But Morgan Whittaker, late in stoppage time, gives Plymouth the win. West Brom 0, Millwall 0. Coventry City 1, Sheffield Wednesday 2. It's just like been back in the 90s. Jack Rodini scores for Coventry. Gassama equalises in stoppage time at the end of the first half. And Shay Charles in on loan from Southampton, the Northern Ireland international, formerly of Man City's academy, with a winner in stoppage time at the end of the second half. So big win for the Owls on the road, and Coventry's bad start continues. And finally then, Bristol City 1, Cardiff 1. Ollie Tanner opens the scoring for Cardiff. Luke McNally, formerly of Burnley, and I want to say Oxford before that, young Irish defender who's probably 24 now, with the equaliser. So, share the spoils. It's a good result for Cardiff, who'd obviously made a very poor start to the season. So if we look at the league table, let's work our way from the bottom up. In the bottom three, you've got Cardiff City and Portsmouth on 5 points, plus QPR on 7 points. Now, Portsmouth are newly promoted. Cardiff, they've sacked their manager, so they obviously did not expect in any way to be where they are. They've been kind of solidly mid-table, bottom half of the mid-table for a couple of years. QPR have been scraping by for a few years, and maybe they're due a relegation, which would be a shame because I'll always have a soft spot for them. I mean, I remember QPR with Les Ferdinand and Trevor Sinclair and Gavin Peacock and Jerry Francis in the dugout and Andy Sinton in the team. And they were a lot of fun. They were one of the most entertaining teams in the league. They were always a tough team to play. Loftus Road is one of my favourite stadiums in England. I'll always have a soft spot for them, but they've been through a lot over the last decade with bad ownership, financial mismanagement, overspending on players, bought a lot of flops over the years. They've gone down. They've kind of stabilised in a lot of ways, but it does feel like maybe there's a hard reset needed at the club. And maybe a year in League One, a confidence-building year where you win most weeks rather than losing most weeks and get back up into the Championship and maybe come back up with a renewed identity and a renewed view of what you want to be. Maybe that's what they need. Just outside the relegation spots then, in 20th and 21st, Coventry City and Luton Town. Two teams who before the season I would have picked as playoff teams. Both of them have 8 points. In 18th and 19th, we have Millwall and Preston North End, both on 9 points. In 14th, 15th and 16th, you get Plymouth Argyle, Sheffield Wednesday and Bristol City, all on 11 points. Now, look, this is all very early and things can change very, very quickly. But Plymouth and Sheffield Wednesday would have entered this season as two of the favourites to go down. They'd obviously been promoted the year before last, and for a number of different reasons, they've had a bit of chaos, with managers changing and whatever. With Schumacher leaving Plymouth to go to Stoke, then another manager coming in, and then this summer bringing in Rooney. With Sheffield Wednesday, there's been a lot of ups and downs, and the ownership's not ideal, and they've changed managers a number of times. They both struggled last year, but this year it looks like both potentially early doors look like they might be on to something and might establish themselves in the mid-table. 13th place then, we'll go 10, 11, 12, 13, all on 12 points. You've got Oxford United, newly promoted, Swansea City, Derby and Hull. Derby obviously newly promoted as well. Hull, this is where I would have predicted them. Mid-table, I think they'll probably drop a little bit from there as the season goes on. They sacked the manager, I think, wrongly, and they lost so many players because they had a bunch in on loan, and then obviously Jacob Greaves leaves and Jayden Philligan leaves. It's a lot of talent to try and replace, especially in the Championship. I think it's going to be a season of stepping back for them and then maybe reloading again next summer. Derby are doing well and Oxford are doing well. Again, it's very early. Derby, one of those weird teams that just don't do draws. The only team in the division so far not to draw a game, 4 wins, 5 defeats, whereas the other 3 teams who have 12 points have 3 wins, 3 draws, 3 defeats. Middlesbrough sitting 9th on 14 points. You've got Norwich and Blackburn in 7th and 8th on 15 points. So only 8 points from QPR to Norwich. right? Which means that if you're in the bottom three now, it's not really panic stations at all. You have plenty of time to turn this around and to get yourself safe. In the playoff spots then, we've got Burnley on 18 points, West Brom on 17 points, Leeds and Watford on 16 points. And then in the automatic promotion spots, you have Sunderland and Sheffield United. Now, this will change dozens of times, most likely. This seems like it's going to be a really tight championship season. It doesn't seem like there's one team who's going to separate themselves from the rest. It remains to be seen. We may well see someone put a run together. Notable things here, Sheffield United, the only unbeaten side. They've also got the best defensive record in the league, which is staggering considering they're the worst defensive team the Premier League had ever seen last year. Watford have conceded 14 goals and are in the playoff spots. There are only there's only 5 teams who've conceded more goals than Watford so far this season. So that seems a bit unsustainable to me, that you concede goals at that level and get, a playoff spot, but we'll see. Portsmouth are the only team yet to win a game. They've also got the worst defensive record, so we can see why they're struggling to win games, but they have drawn 5 of their games. So they're not necessarily easy to beat. They need to find a way to plug the goals, though. They need to find a way to stop teams scoring on them so easily. Like I said, best defensive record is Sheffield United. Worst attack thus far is Cardiff. Only 4 goals through their first 9 games. One of 6 teams, with single-digit goals. You've got Swansea on 8, Preston on 7, Luton have 8, Portsmouth and QPR both have 9. So at this point, you've got a very small sample size, but we do have a sample size that suggests to us that Cardiff might need to find a striker, whether that's moving a player who's already at the club into a different role, whether that's giving a chance to an academy kid, or whether it's just trying to plug away until January. There's a lack of goals in that team that is going to be very, very costly if they don't work it out. Managerially, so far, since the season started, we've seen Ryan Lowe at Preston, Stephen Schumacher at Stoke, and Errol Bulat at Cardiff all fired. Only Cardiff have not yet found a new manager. Now, what would concern me a little bit there is it's over 2 weeks since they sacked their manager. They sacked him on the 22nd of September. We're now the 9th of October and they haven't found a new manager. And that, you look at Stoke, right? They sacked Schumacher on the 16th. By the 18th, they have a new manager in place. Preston sacked Lowe on the 12th of August. By the 20th, they had a new manager in place. Now, that's a bit longer than is ideal at this championship level. But because it was so early in the season, 2 games in, it didn't really make much of a difference. But here, in this scenario with Cardiff, we're 9 games in, you're bottom. You probably want to try and get that manager in to see if you can get that new manager bump. Now, Omar Riza is overseeing games at the moment. He'd previously been manager briefly at Leyton Orient. He oversaw 7 games. He's 3 games in here. 1 win, 1 draw, 1 defeat. So of your 5 points, he's taken 4 of them. You had 6 games and took 1 point. He's had 3 games and taken 4 points. If he wins his next game, if he is to oversee the next game, and if he wins that next game, he might just have worked his way into the job. We'll see. But if you fired your manager without any rough idea on who you were going to go for, that really doesn't speak well to how the club is being run. Right, we'll go to break, we'll come back and we'll have a look at League One. See you in a sec.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Right, welcome back. So, in League One this past weekend, Huddersfield 2, Barnsley 0, Peterborough 2, Stevenage 1, Exeter 1, Cambridge 0, Mansfield 2, Blackpool 0. Mansfield have made a great start. Blackpool have been really good under Bruce, so it's another good result for Mansfield. Burton 1, Bristol Rovers 3, Bolton 2, Shrewsbury 2, Wickham 1, Crawley 0, Wrexham 4, Northampton Town 1, Stockport 0, Wigan 0, Lincoln City 2, Leyton Orient 1, Rotherham 2, Reading 1, and then Charlton 1, Birmingham City 0. That's a disappointing result for Birmingham. Charlton had made a great start. Birmingham, obviously, huge expectations on them this season with the money spent. Every defeat for them is going to be disappointing because their budget and their spend was so much more than everybody else. Their wage bill, I think I read somewhere it's like 40% bigger than anyone else in the division. And that's probably a conservative estimate. We don't have a full round of games in League One this weekend. We only have 2. So Wrexham, Lincoln, Wigan, Northampton, Stevenage, Bolton, Exeter, Mansfield, Bristol Rovers, Blackpool, Birmingham, Cambridge, Barnsley against Reading, Leyton Orient, Huddersfield, and Stockport, Wickham. They're all postponed. They'll all have to be made up at a later date. But we do have 2 games. They're both 3 p.m. on Saturday. It is Crawley Town against Shrewsbury and Peterborough against Rotherham. I would say Peterborough-Rotherham should be a decent enough game if you fancy giving that one a watch. So, the league table, Birmingham are top, no surprise there, but they have now lost their unbeaten run. Wrexham are second. Not necessarily a surprise, but still a surprise because, I mean, who does 3 automatic promotions in a row? It's very, very hard to do. Now, bear in mind, Wrexham have played a game more than the 5 teams below them, but we'll come to that in a while. It's still a really strong start. Anytime you get promoted and 10 games in, you're second in the table, that's a really, really good sign. And even with the fact that the teams below them have games in hand, even if all the teams below them won their games in hand, they would still only drop to 4th. So it's not like a thing that they catastrophically drop or drop out of the playoffs. They'd still be in a really good position. Birmingham top, Wrexham second. Wrexham have played 1 game more. Then you've got Mansfield, Lincoln, Wickham and Stockport. This is shaping up to be a really entertaining season, I think, in League One. We'll go from the bottom with the points totals. You've got Cambridge on 1 point in 24th, Burton on 4 points in 23rd, Shrewsbury on 5 points in 22nd, and Shrewsbury have played 10 games. The others have played 9. Crawley have 7 points in 21st, 9 games. Northampton 8 points in 20th, 9 games. Leyton Orient 8 points in 19th, but they've played 10 games. But then you've got a gap already of 5 points between the bottom 6 and the rest, which after such a small amount of games is a little bit of a worrying sign for the teams in that bottom group. From 15th, 16th, 17th and 18th, you've got Wigan, Reading, Rotherham and Bristol Rovers, all on 13 points. Reading have played 9 games, the rest have played 10. Stevenage are 12th, Bolton are 13th, and Peterborough are 14th, all with 14 points. Bolton only 9 games played. Huddersfield, Blackpool and Barnsley all have 15 points between 9th and 11th. They've all played 10 games. Then you've got then you've got Stockport in 6th, Exeter in 7th, and Charlton in 8th. Charlton have played 10, the other two have played 9. Wickham have 17 in 5th. Lincoln have 18 in 4th. Mansfield and Wrexham. Mansfield are 3rd, Wrexham are 2nd. They both have 20 points. Mansfield have the game in hand. Lincoln, Wickham, they both have the game in hand too, but Wickham, unless they win their game in hand by 6 clear goals, they can't jump Wrexham. Lincoln could, and obviously Mansfield could with a draw. And then Birmingham are top with 22 points and only played 9 games. So potentially looking at a 5-point lead over Wrexham, which again, at this point in the season would be a considerable amount to have. Notable things here, nobody unbeaten. Nobody unbeaten thus far. Only Huddersfield are yet to draw a game. 5 wins, 5 defeats. Burton Albion and Cambridge yet to win a game. Now, Cambridge, obviously, bottom of the table, only the 1 point. But funnily enough, they don't have the worst attack in the league. That belongs to Crawley. Crawley have scored 5, Cambridge have scored 6. They don't have the worst defence in the league. In fact, they don't even have the second worst defence in the league. They've conceded 17, which is the same as Shrewsbury, the same as Northampton. Peterborough have conceded 18, and Burton have conceded 19. The difference is Burton have scored 10, so their goal difference is still better, even with the worst defensive record. And Peterborough have scored 16, so despite conceding 18 and being pretty shambolic defensively, they have one of the better attacks in the league, so their goal difference is only -2. The best attack in the league is Wrexham with 18 goals. The best defence in the league belongs to Wigan, who've only conceded 5 goals, and that is through 10 games. So that's pretty impressive. Now, obviously, in terms of the attack, you've got Birmingham, Mansfield, Wickham. They've only played 9 games, so they've got 1 game played less than Wrexham, so could potentially score 2, 3, 4 goals, whatever, and have a better attack after 10 games. Shout out to Blackpool with 17 goals scored, not because their goal difference is impressive, it's only +1 because defensively they've been very poor, but just because they're fun, and they're fun under Steve Bruce, which I'm not sure anyone would have expected. But credit to Steve Bruce here. He has turned things around really well. Neil Critchley, of course, was sacked on the 21st of August. That came after a defeat away to Crawley and a heavy home defeat to Stockport. They then had Richard Keogh as the interim manager, and he oversaw draws with Cambridge, which is obviously the only point Cambridge have taken, and with Wickham. So when Steve Bruce took over, they had 2 points from 4 games. And they're now sitting 10th with 15 points. 4 wins and a draw in his first 5 league games. Then they lose to Mansfield at the weekend. It's the first defeat under Steve Bruce in the league. They have gone out of the League Cup under Bruce. They lost at home to Sheffield Wednesday, but you don't mind going out to a team that's a division above them. And remember, they did also knock out Blackpool. That was under Critchley, and Blackburn, which was under Keogh. And obviously Blackburn are a division above them. They're in the EFL trophy. They've beaten Crewe. I think that was Steve Bruce's first game in charge, was it not? I think that's the day he took charge. So yeah, I think Blackpool have bounced back after such a poor start and are doing quite well. Managerially, we've only had the 2 dismissals so far. Neil Critchley at Blackpool, obviously, and Scott Lindsay, who left Crawley to go to MK Dons, which is an unusual decision for a manager to make, to go from a League One team to a League Two team. Not sure what it was that prompted him to make that move. Maybe financially, maybe not overly happy with how things are run at Crawley. There's been a lot of complaints made publicly about certain practices at Crawley, the way the finances work, whatever. I don't really know. But that's unusual to see a manager step down the division. Rob Elliott now in as the manager of Crawley as of last week. It's Rob Elliott, you'll remember, who was a goalkeeper for Newcastle for a long, long time. Republic of Ireland international 4 caps. He is the new manager of Crawley. He had previously been with Gateshead and was very highly thought of for the job he was doing with Gateshead. So credit to him on that. Right, I'm going to take another break. Actually, before we get there, we should point out players that are doing well in certain divisions. So in the Championship, which I missed in the first part, your top scorer is Josh Maja, who's got 7 goals already this season. Borja Sands also at 7. Duncan Watmore of Millwall with 5, which is pretty impressive. And then Josh Brownhill, Tom Cannon, Gus Hammer, Mark Harris, Edo Kiambe, Yuki Ohashi, Joel Perot, and Josh Sargent, all with 4. Mark Harris is the name to watch there, though. He's very, very talented. And I think there's something about him that will translate well at this level. He has been with Oxford since last season, was great in their promotion run, and he's just stepping up the level really, really well, which I'm impressed. And then in League One, actually, is there anything else to touch on in the Championship? Oh, clean sheets. Michael Cooper of Sheffield United with 6. Not a surprise, given they've got the best defensive record. Meslier, Alex Palmer of West Brom, and Anthony Patterson of Sunderland with 5. Most yellow cards, Mark Dykes of Bristol and Benjamin Whiteman of Preston. Tighten that up there, lads, like good lads. Most yellow cards, Preston. 30 yellow cards already, and a player that's been banned for, 8 games for biting. Not great. Really not great. And then player of the month for August, the manager is Regis Labrie, who's at Sunderland, and Mark Harris of Oxford was the player of the month for August. In League One, we might as well touch on the top scores and such so far. You've got Lee Gregory of Mansfield and Kwame Puku of Peterborough. Peterborough do well finding goal scorers. Now, Puku is more of an attacking midfielder. He's not a forward player. But he's done really, really well since joining Peterborough. And this season, he's really, really finding form. And no surprise that there's talk of him getting a recall to the Ghanaian national squad. So we'll see if that might not come to fruition, but that is the talk. Louis Barry has 5 for Stockport, as does Dion Charles at Bolton, Jack Marriott at Wrexham, Alfie May at Birmingham, and Adam Phillips at Barnsley. Maybe a bit of a surprise that Jack Marriott is the top scorer so far for Wrexham, given they've got some other good ones. Louis Barry is the one I'm most happy for. He's in on loan from Villa. He's had a couple of loans there now at Stockport. I've always liked him. He came through at West Brom. Him and Morgan Rogers were at West Brom. I think he was a year behind Rogers. And he went to Barcelona at 16, and he just didn't settle at La Masia. And he comes back to Villa, and he hasn't really gotten many opportunities at Villa. I think he's only played a handful of first-team games. One first-team game. It was against Liverpool in the FA Cup, I want to say. And he caused them problems. And that was a game where Villa, if I'm not mistaken, that was a game during the COVID 2021 season. And Villa were missing a bunch of players because of COVID. And he had to step up. And he was the one player that caused Liverpool trouble. He's been on loan pretty much since. But he has good goal-scoring knacks. And I like him. I'm hopeful he might declare for Ireland. I think his mother is Irish, I want to say. Maybe his dad's Irish. Either way, he is eligible for Ireland, and I'm hopeful that's who he'll decide to play for. I think he's a good player. We'll take another break. We'll come back. We'll have a look at League Two. See you in a sec. Right, welcome back. So the Sky Bet
League Two. Sky Bet EFL League Two to give it its full title. Grimsby 0, Doncaster 3 on Saturday just gone. Fleetwood 0, Bromley 0. Chesterfield 2, Walsall 2. Crewe 2, Gillingham 0. Accrington Stanley 2, Morecambe 1. It's a big win for Aki considering both teams were dreadful going into that one. Swindon 0, Harrogate 0. Notts County 0, Port Vale 1. Salford 1, AFC Wimbledon 0. That's just painful. Colchester 0, Carlisle 0. Barrow 2, Cheltenham 1. MK Dons 1. Tranmere 1. And Bradford City 3. Newport County 1. So, this weekend, we have a near full slate of games. There are only 2 postponed, which means we have 10 games in the EFL League 2. Chesterfield against Notts County is the 12:30 kickoff. Then at 3 p.m, Salford against Grimsby, Harrogate against Newport, Barrow against Morecambe, Tranmere against Bradford, MK Dons against Port Vale, AFC Wimbledon against Carlisle. Now, I think that one's still a little bit up in the air because of the issues at Plough Lane after the flooding, but we'll see. Gillingham against Accrington Stanley, Doncaster against Crewe, and Cheltenham against Swindon. That is your weekend run for League 2. And if we take a quick look at the table, we'll go again from the bottom up. You've got Morecambe bottom on 4 points. Then you've got Accrington Stanley on 6 points. Remember, 2 teams relegated to the National League. Carlisle have 7 points. They sit 22nd. Swindon have 8 points. They're in 21st. In 19th and 20th, you've got Bromley and Cheltenham, both on 10 points. In 16th, 17th, and 18th, you have Colchester, Tranmere, and Harrogate. Tranmere do have a game in hand, and I should have pointed out Accrington Stanley also have a game in hand. So a win for them could jump them over Carlisle and Swindon. But given they've only won 1 of 9, it seems unlikely that they will win that game. And that win came over Morecambe. So, they're not exactly beating anybody good. MK Dons and Salford are 14th and 15th with 12 points. Salford have a game in hand. AFC Wimbledon are 13th with 13 points, but they do have 3 games in hand. So potentially they can vault themselves right to the top of the table if they win those games. Now, it's very unlikely that they'd win all 3, but let's say they win 1, draw 1, and lose 1. That would put them bang into the playoffs. Chesterfield have 14 points in 12th. Bradford, Newport, Grimsby, 9, 10, 11, all with 15 points, all with 10 games played. You've got Fleetwood in 7th, which is the last playoff spot, and Crewe in 8th, both with 16 points, both from 9 games played. So both with a game in hand on all the teams above them. So, but 2 games more played than AFC Wimbledon, who are a number of spots below them. Notts County and Port Vale, both with 18 points in 5th and 6th. And then the top 4 can't be separated by points. They've all got 19. You've got Walsall, Gillingham, Barrow, and Doncaster, all with 19 points from 10 games. 6 wins, 1 draw, 3 defeats each. Walsall and Gillingham both are +7 in the goal difference column. Walsall score a lot more goals. Gillingham concede a lot more goals. Walsall have the best attack in the league, 19 goals scored. Gillingham have the joint best defensive record in the league with 5 goals scored. However, the other team that has 5 goals conceded is AFC Wimbledon, who have only played 7 games. So Gillingham have the best defensive record in the league. We have one team who hasn't won yet. That is Morecambe, dead bottom of the league. We have nobody unbeaten. Fleetwood are the only team who's only lost once, and they've played a game less than those teams with 9 games. We have
two teams who are yet to draw, Newport and Grimsby, 5 wins, 5 draws each. It's obviously very, very tight at the top. There's no gap yet appearing at the bottom. It's only 4 points from Morecambe to Swindon, 21st place Swindon, 24th place Morecambe. So a couple of good results in a row and you can pull yourself out of it. Morecambe look a little bit hopeless. If I'm to be completely honest, I've watched 2 of their games this year. I watched them against Acton and Stanley, and they genuinely look hopeless. So I do have some concerns about Morecambe and their future as a Football League club. I have a strong feeling they could be sailing away into the National League. From a managerial point of view, Carlisle sacked Paul Simpson and appointed Mike Williamson. Mike Williamson was hired from MK Dons, who then obviously hired Scott Lindsay to replace him. So again, a bit of an odd one where you see Mike Williamson, another former Newcastle manager, or Newcastle player, managing in the lower leagues. Him leaving MK Dons at a solid mid-table team to go to Carlisle is just a bit of an odd one. Maybe he wanted to go back north. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe he wanted to be back up north. I assume. He's from Stoke, so it's not like he's from the north. It's been 6 years with Newcastle. He did spend 5 years with Gateshead as well, so maybe he just has settled up there, and that's where his family are. So that could well explain why he's made the decision to move back up north and go to Carlisle rather than staying with MK Dons, who are, I think, a more ambitious club, probably a wealthier club, and certainly a club with a more stable future in the division, because we see with Carlisle, they are in the kind of relegation mix. Your top scorers, Michael Cheek of Bromley with 6, James Berry of Chesterfield, Andy Cook of Bradford, and Luke Molyneux of Doncaster, all with 5. Roland Coughlin of Fleetwood, Alassana Jatta and Jody Jones, both of Notts County, Nathan Lowe of Walsall, David McGoldrick, also of Notts County, and Aaron Wildig of Newport County, all with 4. Mark Bonner won Manager of the Month for August, and Luke Molyneux won Player of the Month for August. We don't have September updates on that yet, which is a bit weird. So that is the state of play. I think it's surprising that through each of the divisions, we haven't seen too many managers sacked. What are we at? 9? No, 7. 7 for the 3 divisions, which is very, very low. Now, with the international break, maybe we see 1 or 2 changes made at the Championship or League 1 level. League 2, I think, because if they don't get the break, they'll probably just stay the course for a little while. If you're looking at clubs that could obviously make moves, you're looking at anybody in the bottom 5, the bottom 6 of either League 1 or League 2. Same with the Championship. I'm a little bit surprised so far at how little churn there's been in terms of managers. I did think we'd see more. But teams are maybe just been a little bit steadier, maybe not wanting to take risks, because it can always go badly. It can always go badly, and it often does go badly. Right. I think that's me. No nostalgia today, because I just wasn't feeling very nostalgic. We'll do nostalgia next week for sure, for certain, to figure something out, something good to get into. But thought it was well worth having a look at the lower leagues and how they're shaping up. And if you're curious about the National League, maybe we'll have a look at that tomorrow. But I did want to have a look around Europe tomorrow as well. And obviously there'll be hopefully a couple of questions to get dug into as well. So I'll be back later today with Two Footed Extra, and then obviously tomorrow with the big pod. Take care. Bye-bye.
Right, this show was brought to you by Skybet, as you heard at the start of today's show. We want to thank them for their continued support. And as always, to get involved with Skybet, you need to be over 18. And if you have questions or queries or problems with gambling, visit begambleaware.org and stay safe. Bye-bye.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.